Season 3 Episode 6 is titled Sunsets, which, as per usual, has a couple of different meanings. Literally speaking, the whole Gus meeting and most of the episode climax happens during a sunset, so that is just a slightly ominous one-word title describing a hugely important scene. But what I think the title is actually going for is the sunset for the RV, and really the entire first half of Breaking Bad. Throughout this episode, there are a number of callbacks to important moments from earlier in the series. They serve as a bridge and a reminder of how all of this began. But with Walter now fully committing to the Gus deal, that old life is buried. The era of the wacky RV chemistry is over, and the sun sets on those early and often very chaotic stories. We'll get into all of it in a moment, but really, I see this entire episode as a kind of a requiem and a send-off to what built the Breaking Bad that we had known thus far. The rest of the story, while still deeply grounded in all the interpersonal character narratives, will very quickly sway from this survival mode and just trying to get by to something much grander scale and often almost existential. From this point, right up until the very end of Season 4, it is all gas, no brakes. At this point, everyone knows everyone, and everyone is just waiting for someone else to slip up. The episode opens with Officer Key pursuing a possible disappearance of an elderly woman living alone on the outskirts of Albuquerque. And surprise, surprise, it's time for another classic Vince moment, because his call sign, KDK-12, is almost certainly a reference to Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of Stephen King's The Shining.
This is KDK-12 calling KDK-1.
Now, the rest of the sequence is pretty much the opening to Resident Evil 4, which I guess could also kind of be a Vince reference.
No, man. Resident Evil 4 takes it by a long shot.
Please, brother, you front.
No, man, seriously.
He pulls up to the house, seemingly finds no one there, and just as he turns around, the obligatory spooky shadow shoots past the window. And also note the repeated appearance of Santa Muerte, along with another sketch of Walter's, implying that even with the whole Gus deal, they still thirst for revenge. In again, a very Resident Evil manner, Officer Key eventually finds the woman's body, and well, you know.
Hold it right there! Let me see your hands!
In terms of explicit narrative beats, I think this whole sequence is just about showing us that the cousins are about to pop off regardless. But even so, I do find it a little strange that Officer Key's death wasn't followed up on. Deaths of police officers, especially in such gruesome and just blatant ways, would be a huge deal, and is exactly why the unspoken agreement between the cartels and the DEA existed. Things like the Tortuga incident were fair game because that was an informant, and while the DEA got caught in the blast, they were technically never attacked directly, and so again, kind of an unspoken agreement, yeah, this is very bad, but this is just a part of the game. The cartel always knew that messing with the police would just be very bad for business. Gus would exploit this very fact in this episode to sow chaos himself, but still, I find it a little bit odd that the cold open wasn't directly roped into the entire Hank story. Granted, I have no idea how you could even possibly combine these story threads considering how fast everything else is moving, but I'm just a yapper and that's not my problem. That is Vince's problem, okay? That being said, hit the intro.
Wealth, fame, power. Gold Roger, the king of the pirates, attained this and everything.
Moving into the episode proper, we see Walter staring at a painting, the very same one he already saw in episode 1. Yes, it is, literally the same one, the very same one. Did you, already forget about the painting heist episode? Are you even watching the series? Breaking Bad is of course famous for these kinds of recurring symbols, so the way I saw this particular painting was a kind of a requiem for the different lives that Walter has led, and really, the entire first half of the series. In episode 1, the simple chemistry teacher died as he learned of the cancer. Now, we are watching the death of the in-between Walter, the Walter who tried to reconcile the idea of being that simple chemistry teacher and the ruthless drug producer already neck-deep in cartel work, only to realize that there is no middle ground to be found there. Over these past couple of episodes, we have seen those final fragments of Walter's old life finally crumble. He has now left the school for good, he has signed Skylar's divorce papers, and in this episode, they'd even have to part with the legendary crystal ship, and so yet again...
Growth, then decay, then transformation.
After already getting back into the business, he has no choice but to admit that he has become the bad guy. Skylar then calls him, asking what are they going to do about the divorce regarding Walt Jr., and Walter unfortunately picks the absolute worst possible dialogue tree you could ever even come up with.
Sees your unhappiness and...
My unhappiness? Out of the clear blue sky Unhappiness?
I have never heard someone say the expression of out of the blue as out of blue sky. So I would lean on the side of that being a direct reference to Walter's signature blue sky math, even though Skylar obviously doesn't know about it. It's just meant to say that unhappiness, it comes from blue sky. Though saying that, I suppose there might be some kind of super niche regional thing, because in Latvian, we have the same expression, only it translates directly to out of blue air rather than out of the blue, so I don't know, overanalyzing. Walt has of course ticked off every single form of child support possible, so Skylar turns to that, obviously refusing the drug money. But of course, as we've seen throughout these past couple of episodes, and will continue to do so, her own slippery slope has already started. Ironically enough, with eerily similar questions of illegal money. Granted, that is fraud, and not, well, blood money, but still, it is dirty money. Just last episode, we already saw her starting to make excuses for Walter herself, and in hindsight, we obviously know that she would end up laundering the money. So with this whole money thing, I almost read it as her more so bargaining with herself and not really Walter. She wants those comforts and money for her children. She has seen the life that brings. So even though she brings attention to it and says that no, I can't accept it, I think deep inside, she has practically already accepted it.
Fortunately, this one is the model, so...
Yeah, I like it.
Take it as is.
Name one thing in this world that is not negotiable.
Admittedly, a very cool flex. But that being said, something doxing Vince Gilligan joke, but this is in fact his actual real-life condo.
I prefer to call it the love pad.
I have no idea how and why this fact became commonplace, but yeah, they just straight up talk about it in the episode commentary, so I guess it's just an open secret that this is in fact Vince's actual condo. We then get a brief check-in with Gus, and before we talk about Gus, I again just want to praise the color grading of Breaking Bad because, oh my god, the show is not blue, green, gray. They actually have colors. I naturally watch a bunch of other stuff in between working on these videos, so coming back to Breaking Bad still gives me whiplash every now and then. It does very much feel like every single show nowadays is just gray, blue, green. That's it. Beautiful colors aside though, the twins pop in for a quick visit, setting up the C plot, which would very quickly spiral into the main plot. I won't mention it every time, but them annoying Gus happens repeatedly throughout this episode, which again just works to set up that eventual confrontation of the cartel and Gus. We then cut to Jesse, who is already advertising his new enterprise.
It's the right shade of blue.
Oh, Riverdance!
Hey, stop marking up my floor, dumbass.
Look, Walter can say whatever about Jesse's product, but it's definitely Badger approved. But Jesse quickly pivots the conversation toward business. And note his clothes, except for the t-shirt underneath, it's all beige/cream colored, and he's wearing a cardigan. Jesse is wearing a cardigan. He has fallen into the same class as all of Walter's Grey Matter associates. He is scolding Badger for messing up his fine wooden flooring, he is immediately talking about business, and generally, he is pretty well off. Obviously, most of his money did go toward his parents when he bought the house, but still, this Jesse is night and day to the one who started this little gang.
We sell it smart. We don't get greedy. Oh, and you know that buzzer thing? Leave the key in the ignition and it buzzes. Whatever, just have him put in one of those.
The whole key in the ignition thing is of course a very clear callback to 4 Days Out and the time they killed the battery by leaving the keys in the ignition. But again, he is Walter. He is sending out Skinny to get all the supplies, like he himself once did. He's sending out Badger to get the RV in perfect condition to avoid all suspicion, and he himself is merely the brains of the operation. He has completed his transformation, and he truly has risen to just about the same level of Walter, and unfortunately, that also comes with Walter's inherited problems, because unfortunately for their new enterprise, they exist in a whole different era now, and do-overs no longer fly.
Brandon Mayhew. Small world, Albuquerque.
Famously, Badger had his run-in with Citizen Z, and Saul was sent to get him out, so Hank does indeed know him very well. And big picture-wise, Hank of course just discovered the whole Combo Jesse RV link, so at this point, he is very much one layer removed from the whole operation blowing up before it ever even gets started. Warning. I am a very goofy goober who did about 5 minutes of research into this before concluding that researching domestic laws would be a pain. Researching foreign laws would basically just be me LARPing and none of it would be accurate anyway. So with that warning out of the way, I find this idea a little bit interesting. theoretically, if Hank had some help, even just Gomez, they might have been able to trail Skinny and obviously see that he is stocking up on very sus supplies. Most of that would obviously be perfectly legal things, so that alone isn't enough for probable cause. But it might be enough to call in a canine unit, which, in theory, could bypass the entire warrant issue altogether. The RV was parked in a readily accessible lot, so I'm pretty sure that limits pretty much all legal defense for the canines. So, in theory, if they did indeed sniff something, which they almost certainly would have, that would be Jesse cooked. In reality, I have no idea. I just find the idea interesting that Hank is going on the solo, and obviously this whole pursuit of Heisenberg is very much self-destructive, and in doing that, he also kind of fails to catch Jesse when, had he had support, he would have actually got him. And on a somewhat similar note, we jump to Walter's new operation, and right away, there's a bunch to unpack here. Firstly, and yes, absolutely overanalyzing, but the alarm clock is blue, the color of power, and of course, Walter's signature meth. It is literally an alarm signaling the next step in his career as a part of Gus's empire. And similarly, both the little napkin he packs for himself, as well as his shirt, are all blue. He is completely absorbed in the magic of chemistry. And like we've already seen with the divorce, and we'll see throughout this episode, it does kind of seem like everything else is falling by the wayside for him, and he's just kind of enjoying the cooking. That is until Hank almost catches them. Secondly, the whole breakfast charade of packing himself a sandwich and even writing his name on it, I think is another case of Walter trying to signal composure, while in truth, his personal life is of course imploding. He will show up to his new workplace with a neatly packaged lunch and make himself appear as the model husband and father. But the whole thing is a mirage. The whole act has completely 180'd from him constantly pretending for Skylar to now pretending for the drug world. After awkwardly sitting around for a bit, he goes to pick up Walt Jr., and again, despite him trying to play off everything as being hunky-dory, Jr. clearly isn't excited about the whole arrangement.
What? I don't get a vote in this either? I gotta stop going with Lewis just because you're feeling guilty?
To some extent, sure, he must feel like there is finally some clarity in what's going on, but at the same time, Walter is practically treating him as a kind of a weird bargaining chip to compensate for his own sense of guilt. This isn't the first time we've seen this either, with Walter also yanking him away for more driving lessons, so I think it's understandable that Junior is getting a little bit fed up. Like, sure, he probably wants his parents to be together and for everything to just kind of be alright, but at the same time, he doesn't want to be this weird bargaining chip where Walter is now going to spend time with him just out of some weird moral obligation. After dropping him off, he pulls into the laundromat and we get the first appearance of Gale.
I received my bachelor's degree from UNM, my master's from the University of Colorado.
I'm curious about this.
That's a little pet project of mine.
And oh boy, this right here is my trap card. I very much happen to be a weird coffee person myself, and when I say weird, I mean we are treating it like literal science. We have long forgotten about making coffee. We are literally doing molecular chemistry. Obligatory shout out to all these wonderful coffee people here on YouTube, but Gale's machine, while sounding kinda sorta okay on paper, is a convoluted nightmare that just... no.
They bought a very beautiful coffee decoration rather than a functional coffee brewer. This is probably as close as you're going to get to that scene in Breaking Bad where they have the ridiculous coffee contraptions. You want something like that? As an aside, that setup in Breaking Bad doesn't make coffee. It's not real. It's not practical. You couldn't brew coffee with it. It doesn't make any sense. The whole scene's a bit weird and mostly nonsense if you ask me.
First and foremost, siphon brewers are indeed like the coolest looking things on the planet, and I desperately want to own something like Gale's crazy wacko machine. But unfortunately, they are also aggressively mid. Like anyone wanting to perfect coffee would never so much as look at a siphon pot. There are so many techniques of controlling variables in coffee. A siphon pot is not it.
It's all about the quinic acid level. You want just north of 4,800 milligrams per liter.
The whole quinic acid level is practically not even worth talking about and is completely made up. Again, there's a lot of science with extraction and roasting and everything else, but just as a ballpark, there is 3.3 to 8.5 milligrams of quinic acid per gram of green coffee. If he were to somehow concoct this 4.8 thousand milligrams per liter drink he's talking about, I'm not exaggerating for the sake of funny, goofy, and saying it would taste disgusting. I mean this literally. They'd be drinking some kind of viscous acid sludge. It'd be like the worst parts of crema, but times 10. It would completely dry out your mouth. It would taste like literal metal. Like, this is not even a preferences thing. There is nothing to entertain here. This would be... no. Real filter coffee sits somewhere between 400 and 700 milligrams per liter of quinic acids. So, yeah. That being said, it's not all made-up nonsense. Pulling a mild vacuum and reducing the boiling temperature to about 92°C fixes most of the problems with the siphon, which requires you to bring water to a full boil, which is not good for extraction. Granted, I have no idea if all that yappery makes sense in the context of what he's doing, but in theory, yeah, limiting the temperature probably is going to result in a better brew. But just to finish off on a good note...
And I also have to give credit to the grind.
This is a public service announcement. If you want to increase the quality of your coffee 1,000-fold, but don't want to become a crazy coffee person, please just follow these simple steps. Number 1. Find a local roaster and buy freshly roasted beans. Anyone worth buying from will always have the roast date right there on the package. If it's not there, 99% of the time, it's just like, don't, find something else. Number 2. If you happen to have a blade grinder at home, throw it into Mount Doom. Number 3. Buy a hand grinder and grind your newly acquired coffee fresh for every cup. Nowadays, there are crazy good hand grinders for like 100 doubloons. I promise it is worth it. Number 4. Profits.
Why the hell are we making meth?
No, but like seriously, good beans and a good grinder will genuinely get you to like 95% of the way to excellent brews. Half the coffee I drink is made with a €10 plastic V60, and the coffee is gorgeous. Be warned though, the upgrade-itis is very contagious, and you might find yourself browsing $5 grand espresso machines in no time, even though you don't need them. But man, you really want them. Coffee yapping aside, we get the famous Walter and Gale cooking scene, and the future is looking very bright for old Heisenberger.
Wondering how you ended up here.
There's crime. And then there's crime. Consenting adults want what they want. At least with me, they're getting exactly what they pay for. No added toxins or adulterants.
This was always a very interesting conversation to me, because in many ways, they are exactly alike. Both are researchers who fail to meet their full potential in traditional academia / industry / whatever, and both ended up using their very rich skill set to produce meth.
Because it's all still magic. Chemistry?
It is. It is magic. It still is.
But at the same time, there is a stark difference in how they justify this line of work, and Gale largely turns out to be exactly what Walter pretends to be. To Gale, this whole drug business is just that, business. Someone's going to make it, so why wouldn't he just make the best and, relatively speaking, safest product possible? He doesn't concern himself with the morality around the production or anything else. People know what they're buying, so let them buy it. And if you think back to Walter in Season 1, he used a somewhat similar justification when he got involved with Jesse. He forbid the whole chili powder nonsense and repeatedly stressed that they'll make a perfectly pure product and never cut any corners. I mean, think about it. He knows chemistry. He could be stretching all their materials to the nth degree and probably make more money, but he doesn't do that. To Walter, that was enough to displace responsibility onto the buyers. But as we've been following Walter's story, it has very quickly become clear that he is no libertarian selling drugs just because they were going to be sold anyway. He is doing it because he wants to amass more power and more wealth. He wants to feel the magic of chemistry and the perpetual rush of always being the best. So yes, both of them are kindred spirits with a lot in common, but in terms of how this business has changed them, it's night and day. Returning to Hank, he eats the french fry that makes you furiously angry. No, like seriously, I have never seen a person be so annoyed while eating a french fry in my life. Something about that is just so comical to me.
This is that Pinkman character?
That's the one. Until he actually leads me to it, or...
Not to bring up ancient history, but I, for one, can think of someone who might know something.
Who?
I just know John Shiban, I don't know how you say his name, wrote this with a big stupid grin because pulling the who only to cut to the who will forever be one of my favorite cheeky cuts when done right. When you have these super interconnected plots, especially if there is a whole cat and mouse game component, it is always such a wait, hold up, are we already converging moment? I love it. And on a similar note, the fact that we are now explicitly tying together the whole Jesse and Walter link, and we know that Jesse is already in Hank's sights, and he is not working with Walter anymore, in terms of building tension, that is 0 to 100. And also, the Whitman book is of course eventually the thing that brings Walter down, just like that original phone call that linked Jesse to Walter in the first place. So, effectively, we are seeing the compounding damage of that singular mess-up right at the start of the series, and it will repeat again. And all of that is wrapped up in this one scene. It's so good.
Cut to the chase.
And I was trying to track you down through your former student, Jesse Pinkman. Do you remember if this Pinkman kid ever had an RV? Brown and beige?
That's it. I have no analysis to give you. This is the kind of cat and mouse game I live for. Two dudes on directly opposite sides suddenly pivoting to the one detail that could unravel the whole story. I am seated, I am locked in, I will watch the whole thing start to finish with 1000% of my attention. And right on the heels of this revelation, we got to Big Boss Man Jesse with another signature Breaking Bad through the glass shot. Love it here, love it always.
Yo. What? Mr. White.
Quick editing Koroto note because I just realized yet another thing about Breaking Bad. I also find it very interesting that Jesse even picked up the phone call, considering that they didn't really leave off on the best terms, you know. I suppose you could argue that in this particular instance, it very much does seem like just plot convenience that he does actually pick up, but no, in my opinion, what it's actually showing is that even though Jesse is still very much not exactly happy with Walter, his hot-headedness is practically gone. Even though they definitely do have beef, this Jesse, the Jesse that has been through everything they've been through, does realize that Walter calling him could be very, very important, and it might be worth setting aside their beef, which obviously he turns out to be correct. Back to past Koroto. That right there is another catastrophic whoopsie-daisy. If Hank had been working with the DEA, Walter would most likely be cooked right here, as Jesse's phone would have certainly been tapped. I mean, I suppose he could start making excuses about actually luring Jesse out, but I mean, if it were to come to that, he'd be cooked either way because like Jesse would just tell them everything. But realizing his mess up, he quickly calls up Saul instead.
Hey, hello to you too.
He knows about the RV.
The one which contains a meth lab? Which is covered with my fingerprints, ring a bell? Okay. What do I look like? The RV disposal people?
Hilarious, but as much as this is thrilling to watch from start to finish, there might also be a pretty significant plot hole / continuity error here. Walter, of course, bolts right for Clovis's yard, except he has never dealt with Clovis and shouldn't even know that the RV is there. Way back in Season 2, Jesse did mention that Badger's cousin would take care of it, but Walter is never made aware of what exactly that entails. And the thing is, as much as he is a stickler for details, when Jesse was handling distribution or stashing the meth or whatever else, as odd as it may seem, Walter really didn't care all that much. I mean, he didn't even know where the whole stash of their product was. So this might be a kind of a plot hole, but it's of course also entirely plausible that he was told the address just off-screen in Season 2 or something. Strictly on-screen though, he shouldn't know anything about anything really. Oh yeah, and in case you were wondering, what the hell is the thing that Saul is sleeping on? That is apparently a chi machine, because of course it is.
We have got to destroy the evidence. We've got to rig this thing to burn. Do you understand? No guy that'll wipe this off the planet. No questions asked. Call him.
Hey, it's me. Want to hear something weird?
And just like that, Jesse is leading Hank right to Walter and the RV, all rolled up in a neat package. Before we get to that though, there's a few more things to talk about as Walt makes a deal with old Joe. As he rummages through the RV for one last time, he notices whole cratefuls of Funyuns, which is another callback to their long cookouts. But I also love how we see Walter just briefly reminisce about the lab. Even in the midst of all the craziness, he can't help but have this bizarre sense of longing for those simpler days. He could just disappear into the desert and truly live the magic of chemistry. For Walter, this really is the death of that life, and while he himself might have chosen it, he will, of course, quickly learn that corporate life might not be for him either. That being said, there is no time to mourn because we are cooked.
Oh God. What? What?
You led him right to us.
Frankly, I am amazed that this wasn't, 1, a season finale, and 2, wasn't even a cliffhanger episode, because, again, This is insane. And what I find most interesting about the scene is that it wasn't pre-planned in advance. This one was very much a discovery along the way. Again, in prior episodes, we have talked about the shake-up in writing styles, with Season 3 largely being written with the philosophy of simply letting the dominoes fall where they may. But when you do that, you can arrive at a scene like this, and you have written yourself into a corner.
So, you guys, though, how did you guys come up with this whole legal thing?
That's where we were in the story when we were breaking the story in the room. It was like, how are they going to get out of here? And we went...
Now we're done.
In the episode commentary, they even note that all the suggestions of ramming Hank's car and whatnot were actually things that the writing team entertained as well. And while I love to just nerd out about this from a purely visionary and strategy perspective, I do think that this moment of the writers just writing themselves into a corner is exactly why this kind of tension is practically impossible to manufacture. There is no contrived plot here whatsoever. This literally was written as, if this, then that. Hank catching them was the only logical outcome, and that is exactly why it feels so monumental. It is 100% organic. Obligatory citations to the video about foreshadowing and Gardner authors versus architect authors, because while the internet has recently grown obsessed with this idea of quote-unquote good authors planning literally everything 35 years in advance, scenes like this will always remind me that, no, sometimes you just go off vibes, and it's glorious. That being said, I know I literally just clowned on people constantly talking about foreshadowing, but in hindsight, man, Hank removing the tape and the light suddenly shining through across Walter's stomach sure as hell seems ominous to me. Now realistically that was a callback and not foreshadowing, but still seeing it here rattles me. And also, the whole bit of old Joe practically being a lawyer is hilarious.
This is a domicile, protected by the Fourth Amendment from unlawful search and seizure. It seems to me you're just out here fishing. Don't see that holding up in a court of law.
But yes, they pull their whole little lawyer play, and Hank decides that we're just going to get a warrant, which, again, they are cooked. But you know what they say.
Look, you two guys are just guys. Mr. White, he's the devil.
Hank suddenly gets a call about Marie having been in an accident, and holy hell, does that mark a turn for Walter. Thus far, Walter has obviously done many bad things, some of which pretty clearly also hurt his family, if not in direct ways, then maybe one layer removed. But this is a crazy low blow, and I think is already a good showcase of how far he'd be willing to go when he is truly cornered. He weaponizes his own family against itself. This time, it was all a lie and no one at all was hurt, but still, a lie like that? Taking inspiration from Gale's words, there's lies, and then there's lies. And don't forget about Hank's PTSD. This didn't just scare him, knowing or not, this explicitly pressed on that trauma. Also, this shot is goddamn gorgeous. But the way Hank's panic is then shot and directed is also just beautiful. The haunting echo of the phone ringing, the muted colors, the completely disorientating cuts, and then the abrupt cut to dead silence.
Marie?
I'm just checking in. I'd love to.
I love it, especially as all the color and all the sound comes flooding back in and we realize that it was all just a lie. It's so good. The RV getting destroyed looks so cool that Jesse in the Psycho series tried doing the same thing. But okay, deep YouTube cuts aside, the final scenes of the episode take us back to Gus and meeting at sunset. From his knowledge of the DEA, he of course pulls out his secret reverse Uno of knowing that it was not in fact Walter who killed Tuco.
Hank Schrader.
And while the cousins initially object, saying that the boss says DEA is off limits, Gus says that in his territory, his say is final, and that this is his gift to them. In classic Gus fashion, the reality is that this is another one of his crazy multi-pronged plans finally coming to fruition. First and foremost, he protects his golden goose in Walter. Even before they got back into business together, Gus was already shielding him, so clearly, even in spite of his antics, he still sees a lot of money to be made. Secondly, if Hank does indeed go down, that is a huge potential leak for Walter personally gone. In time, Gus is proven correct. Hank would crack the Walter case just because he happened to be at his house, so removing him from the board entirely would eliminate these oddities of family altogether. But thirdly, for Gus, this is also a huge play for his drug empire. DEA officers are off limits for a reason. An officer being shot in broad daylight would and will have the full brunt of the DEA coming down on the cartel smuggling routes. Gus works north of the border and has complete autonomy over his production, so having the DEA turn up their efforts to 11, somewhat paradoxically, instantly turns Gus's business into a monopoly. Eventually, we of course see Gus go to finish off the cartel for good, but in terms of this scene right here, just this single act of pitting the cousins and Hank against one another is basically targeted sabotage. And to think that all of this happens right off the heels of the RV craziness, like, the latter half of Season 3 is just an absurd cascade from this point onward. And also, this shot is gorgeous. And with that, that is Sunset. First of all, yes, the audio is terrible. I'm doing the TikTok thing, I think that's going to help a little bit, but this room is still a work in progress. This is the Korotos Shack 2.0, so bear with me here. I think we should be fixed by next episode. Oh, actually, hold up. This is not scripted, I swear to you. I just realized Vince Gilligan is once again foreshadowing my life. I'm talking about Sunset, the sunsetting of the RV, the requiem for the first half of Breaking Bad. I'm tearing down my room. The Korotos Shack 1.0 is being torn down. I'm literally tearing the whole thing down and sitting in this empty space. It's not even funny anymore. What did Vince see? How does he know? Vince? Is that you? And on that note, I guess I have to give a massive thank you to our current patrons and YouTube members who allow me to produce even more of these for you all. First and foremost, Gus Fring, apparently. Tolly Zay, Ken, I think, Ted B, Eddie 007, and Leviathan. Without you, there would be a whole lot less of my ramblings, and apparently the Superlab / Korotos Shack 2.0, because Vince is literally foreshadowing it. This is, literally just realized this. I couldn't have scripted this better. What? But yes, other than that, I want to say thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and hopefully, I'll see you in the next one. In the Korotos Shack 2.0, and in Walter's Superlab. Again, could not have scripted this better. Bye-bye.